McLaren has confirmed that next year it's not going to do a full-time IndyCar programme, so that throws into doubt what Fernando Alonso is going to do next year. I've got Tom Errington, our US expert, and Ben Anderson, editor of F1 Racing, here to discuss Alonso's prospects for next year. Now, we know he's not going to be in Formula One and he is going to continue in the WEC Super Season, but perhaps, unlike we thought a couple of months ago, Tom, no full-time IndyCar. What's changed since then? Because when he announced that he wasn't going to stay in F1, this seemed almost nailed on, especially when he finally tested the 2018 car as well.
Yeah, I think that was it. When he finally got in a 2018 spec car, you wouldn't really be doing that unless you had an eye on doing something like a full season pretty soon.
On a road course as well.
Exactly. So it was all a new experience for him. The way he was talking about his approach, doing a ridiculous amount of running to learn it, all signs there sound like a man who's preparing to jump into a series where he needs to win pretty quickly, get his Triple Crown sorted. Since then, it seems to be that McLaren have just run into roadblock after roadblock. Partly Alonso's fault. His GP2 engine comments have come back to haunt him quite a bit there. At first, when we raised that as a potential concern, Honda were very quick to tell us that it's not a problem, we'd love to work with him again. It appears that America might have thought that, but those in Japan did not agree with that assessment, and that option quickly closed off. When they were looking at partnerships, they had Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. They were talking to them a little bit. Ed Carpenter was also mooted as well. The fact that both those teams have now either looked to expand or signed of a deal suggests there was something there. The Andretti was more difficult being a Honda partner. Not so much a formal partnership. They lost that when they considered Chevrolet in the past. But the way to get Alonso in there proved trickier because they run Honda engines. Honda won't supply Alonso. How do you make that work? And there was just loads of convoluted talk about working with the Harding team that was quickly becoming an Andretti Junior team. But that meant Honda and Chevrolet engines being close to each other. The potential information sharing there was uncomfortable for manufacturers. But it looked like it was still going to happen. McLaren and Andretti got really deep into talks, but it looks like it was just something that as a new season approached, time was running out to make something truly formal.
And I guess there's no chance that he could just go and do his own deal to race in IndyCar, retaining a personal affiliation to McLaren, but McLaren perhaps say to him, right, go and do your own thing, go and find yourself a drive.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's become clear over the off-season is that IndyCar interest is really, really high now. Probably more than it's actually capable of taking on. IndyCar made a good point to me recently when they were talking about potentially sort of 30 cars on a grid, was a lot of the tracks can't take more than sort of 26, 27, 28, particularly the street courses. So that's a bit of a limitation. So at the minute we're looking at sort of 3 seats, but there's about 12 drivers looking at those 3 seats, including someone like Marcus Ericsson as well. Then you've got the complications of the money they bring and all that as well. It makes it really quite tricky now for him to go and find a seat for that. The Indy 500 will be a lot easier. Andretti always runs as many cars as physically possible, some other teams as well. And I'm sure Andretti will be right at the front of the queue for that, but a full season seat looks very difficult to achieve.
Ben, is there an element here that McLaren's problems in F1 just continue to get worse and worse? You know, if anything, the 2018 car has deteriorated compared to where it was at the start of the season. So is it perhaps good for McLaren to just focus on F1 at the moment and not try to take this on just yet?
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, Zach Brown has said repeatedly they're laser focused on F1, and they need to be really, because they're a shadow of what they should be. You would say perhaps that they could fit the program in around Formula One as if they can just offload it onto somebody else, you know, like Andretti, an experienced team that can just run it for them, and they don't really have to have any involvement unless they want to. But failing that, I don't really feel like McLaren is ready to just do the whole thing itself from start-up, and that's the problem really. They're caught between this rock and hard place, aren't they? They're not kitted out to run an IndyCar team, and it's a big undertaking to set one up. And they've burned too many bridges to just park their star driver in a ready-to-go winning team. And a driver like Alonso isn't really going to be the guy that's going to scrabble around trying to put a budget together to race for somebody further down the grid. You know, he's, as we see from him doing the WEC Super Season, he wants to go in and win, and nothing else will do. So he's going to have to console himself, I guess, with racing in the WEC only for the rest of that half season. But at least it's a higher level than Formula One, as he pointed out at the US Grand Prix.
In fairness, he did retract that statement slightly when he watched some footage. But Tom mentioned there the Indy 500. You've had to profile Alonso quite a lot during your time writing for Autosport and for F1 Racing. You've done some really in-depth pieces on him. Does the fact that we're not going to get a full season in 2019 of IndyCar, but he could still go back to the Indy 500, does that point to maybe his interest is purely the Triple Crown and he's purely trying to conquer Indy rather than going over there full time?
Yeah, I would say so. I always got the impression that Indy was more important than anything else in that American element of his odyssey, if you like. So if he can do a one-off deal for Indy again, I think that will satisfy him. Obviously, he wants to be racing every weekend, and he's been saying, you know, if winning more world championships in Formula One is impossible, which it now looks to be the case, then he just wants to be the best driver he can be and become known for being the best and most versatile driver of his generation. To do that, he has to get himself in multiple different cars and categories. So if a full IndyCar season is off the table, maybe it never was really on the table, then perhaps we'll see Alonso cropping up in all sorts of random places, a bit like when Kimi Raikkonen was demoted from Ferrari so Alonso could go there, and he spent his off time doing random bits of rallying, some NASCAR. So who knows what Alonso will be up to? We know obviously he'll be doing the rest of the WEC, but you know, if he wants to showcase this versatility, then he's going to need to do more than just WEC and IndyCar, isn't he?
The WEC's an interesting point though, isn't it? I mean, he raised doing Le Mans, and when he won Le Mans, pretty quickly he was saying, well, that's it now, he's going to find a way out of Toyota and all these sort of various conspiracy camps. But he was very quick to say, no, I want to do the full season, being a world champion in that appeals. So I think in a lot of ways we thought, if he's applying that to WEC, surely he'll apply that to IndyCar. But since then, as we've had him, you know, showing interest in the Daytona 500 and that sort of things, perhaps, as you say, that mindset has changed now to, I just want to take on all the best, most recognisable races in the world, rather than dedicate myself to a series 1 year or however many years it will take to win it and then move on again.
Perhaps he's also learned his lesson from upsetting Japanese manufacturers as well. So yeah, given that Toyota has, you know, gone to a lot of effort to allow him to win Le Mans and take part in the super season, he's thinking, well, let's keep them sweet. I need to fulfil that obligation. But outside of that, I think, well, he's a free man, isn't he, really? So he can do what he wants. And if an IndyCar season isn't possible or doesn't appeal, then I guess he'll look at other options. Maybe he'll just go and play football, spend some time on the beach. Often drivers can come back from, you know, periods of inactivity or breaks and be better, more refreshed. You know, he's been in that Formula One grind for a long, long time, and it's been a real grind as well, hasn't it? You know, since,
it's not gone well in recent years.
No, and in recent years, and even before that, in the near misses with Ferrari, they took a lot out of him. And
this is the thing, it's 12 years now since he won a world championship, and back in 2006, you never thought that he'd still be a two-time world champion at arguably the end of his F1 career.
No, absolutely. So, you know, perhaps he's a guy that desperately needs a break and can come back the stronger for it.
What's the perception, Tom, on the US side of things? I imagine that people liked the fact that he didn't just want to come back for Indy when it appeared that there was going to be a full season. Do you think that now people will start to think, oh, you're maybe not taking this as seriously and you're just trying to chalk up another trophy rather than really coming and immersing yourself in IndyCar properly?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think IndyCar certainly saw the value in it when we were spending so long trying to firm up the fact that this was happening. When IndyCar finally decided to go on the record, it was interesting that they chose to say McLaren and Fernando Alonso. So for all the comments he's made about, oh, it was never really on the agenda, it clearly was at some point for them to go out and say that. But I think the fact that things like international TV deals were delayed for Alonso again shows that there's potentially a big impact there. A lot of the drivers have talked up him coming because, you know, why wouldn't you? It's a great yardstick to measure yourself against. Same for the team side as well. But I think in a lot of ways, the fact that the interest is higher than ever. You know, IndyCar bosses have been in Europe most of the off-season trying to find this third manufacturer, shows that there's more to their plan to be seen more recognisable than just Fernando Alonso coming over for a year or the Indy 500. This is a string in the bow rather than expecting Alonso to be the be-all for them.